Uh, okay. Says everything has gone through. Refreshing pages.
Incoming transmission.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Geek on My Sleeve channel, where we do weekly book reviews, summary recaps, live book discussions, and today's a special one because we are also going to be dissecting the movie as well as the book and comparing and contrasting. So kind of a unique one for us today, and it's at a earlier time frame for us because bow, we've got Ben from Ben's Blurb with us and trying some new software. How's everything going, Ben?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. The software, it looks really good. It looks really sleek.
Yeah, that's kind of what we thought too. It really adds a bit of polish to the show. So we're going to give it a shot and see how it works. So yeah. Ready Player One. Oh, hold on here. Multitasking poorly. Yeah, the timing of this, I think we had it scheduled before they officially announced Ready Player Two.
Yeah.
So, gosh, there's so much that we could just talk about with just the book alone and the movie. But I really kind of want to get into some of that and then also do a bit of theory crafting for Ready Player Two. I haven't done a whole lot of research on it yet, but I'm not sure if we officially have the plot yet. Do you know, Ben, if they've announced that, or is it straight up just theory crafting at this point?
As far as I know, they've just announced the book's coming out, and that's all I'm aware of. I know it's coming out November 24th, isn't it? And that's all I know. I don't know how it's going to start or what they're doing on it. It's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be a busy holiday season for me. Ready Player Two, the fourth book of the Stormlight Archive. There's just a lot of good stuff coming out at the end of the year.
Or isn't Bobaverse 4 coming out too?
Yeah, and Bobaverse Book 4. Oh my goodness, there's just so much good stuff. So, kind of changing things up a bit, but do want to get the disclaimer out. This is going to be full of spoilers for Ready Player One. If you're not okay with that, now's your time to abort, catch it in the archives. But yeah, going to get into it. I guess best place to start out is what we all think of the book itself. I know that I came across it shortly after starting getting into lit RPG genre, and it was kind of like tagged as a lit RPG book. Now that I've gone through it, I don't know if I personally would count it as a lit RPG book, but it's definitely like a video gamer book, and I know all three of us are gamers here. So, Pete, you want to take a stab at it first, or should we let Ben go?
Either way works. We'll let Ben go.
All right.
What are we asking about the book itself?
Yeah, what is your overall impressions of Ready Player One, the book? We talked a bit offline, and you said you first read it a couple years ago.
Yeah, I think someone recommended it to me. I want to say, I think someone recommended it. Oh, yeah, it was a friend of mine. It was my best friend, Gary, recommended it to me. I remember now. I think it came in a Loot Crate box, I think, or some sort of Loot Crate box. It got like a big push for that.
Okay.
I think he read it and then recommended I read it. So it's an amazing book, and I gave it 5 stars because it's just very unique, and I can see how lit RPG recommendations would sort of cover it a little bit, because it's not directly, create your own adventure kind of thing you read when you're a kid in the 90s, but it very much is that kind of, it's almost like you're sucked into a computer game sort of story, but you're not quite sucked into one. And it's just such a cool story, and it's like the good guy versus like the evil corporation, and it's very I suppose a very just cause. Like I think it resonates with everyone because we'd all be behind it. We'd all want to stop the bad guys sort of winning. And yeah, and I think it's just a really, really well written story. I know he wrote Armada as well, which I've read and I didn't think it was nowhere near as good. So I think that's probably why he's gone back to writing a sequel. But yeah, Ready Player One is, if anyone hasn't read it, they're in for a treat because it's such an easy read as well. It's not heavy on descriptions, and it's just light on everything, and it's got plenty of action.
I haven't read any of his other stuff, but you said this is the better of his books by far.
Oh yeah, Armada's, it's a bit like Space Invaders if it was real. It's a bit like Skyward, where Skyward is a really good book, but Armada just doesn't hit that mark, and I think that's what I would guess he's gone back to Ready Player One to write a sequel, because it's good, but it's probably about a 3 out of 5 book. It's not as good as Ready Player One.
Okay. I read it first, I want to say a couple months before the movie came out, but going back and rereading it, just like so much more of the book like resonates with 2020. Like early on when he's talking about like how like the economy's taken a turn, and just like listing through all this stuff, like another economic crash, another like virus, another pandemic, another so on and so forth. So there's definitely a lot of relatability to the characters in the current day and age. What'd you have there, Pete?
Oh man, like this book is what we should be doing right now. The movie, I'm sorry, I have to think of it as independent. It's not even remotely the same story. There's like 2 connecting points, like the characters' names are the same and the guy who wins at the end is the same, but that's like the only thing that's similar. None of the keys are the same, none of the objectives are the same. The main character's story plot is completely different. Like, anyway, but I really enjoyed the book, and it touched on so many great points, and it really did right by me by diving into the world and then dealing with the problems, because it's a common thing for I guess for me to want to get trapped in a game world and that being a thing, but it goes through the good, the bad, and the ugly about it, where people want to escape because the world's not up to snuff. We've burned up all our fossil fuel, other problems going on in the world, and they want the escape, but through all the trials and the real world events, it's they're coming to terms with it, and they can't always be in the world. And I don't know, there's a lot of great points with it, and just the way it was forward and backwards at the same time, where it went backwards and was talking about a lot of nostalgia and a lot of older things that they enjoyed. And that's kind of what we do here. We just nerd out about, things we enjoy. And then it went forward with the new technology and the new games. And that's something that, I would be excited to see for the future, getting the whole omnidirectional treadmills, and doing more with VR or AR. So yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah. There certainly is a lot there. Yeah. And like you were saying earlier, the book I really enjoyed. The movie I really enjoyed, but they're very much 2 different mediums, right? And it's going to be very interesting to see if or when they get a Ready Player 2 movie, which I want to get into some of the theory crafting there, to see kind of the directions they go. It's almost like a parallel universe instead of a recreation of the book itself.
Real quick here. Anna asks, is it something like the movie Matrix? Kind of, but not really. It's kind of like the Matrix, but you're not in there against your will. It's the world, or IRL in real life, is kind of just, destroyed and shabby, and everybody, or the vast majority, is in the, almost third world poverty type deal where they can't get basic necessities, and they, can't find jobs, and no employment, and just everything's bad. So by escaping to another world, or the virtual world, it's more enjoyable. It's not really against your will. And
Yeah.
there are, I guess, many aspects, and in the book they touch on it, where they say not everybody enjoys the PvP or PvE aspects and leveling up your characters. A lot of them just go to the malls and hang out, or go to, concerts, or go do whatever, and they just stay in areas that they're not going to risk dying in.
Right.
A little bit of
Right.
everything for everyone.
Yeah. We were talking a little bit offline before we hopped on, getting ready for it and everything. But Ben has some friends that have worked with the movie, right? So I'd be curious to hear kind of your thoughts on the movie.
Yeah, firstly, the movie's kind of like, I love the movie, and I think it's amazing, and I think I've got a bit of a bad memory. Like I can remember faces and names really well, I think, because it's part of my job. But in terms of like remembering what's in books and films, I'm not great. But I think the movie was fantastic, and I just don't. Some people don't like it, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? It was amazing. There was so many good bits in it. I know it was very different originally, especially like Pete said about the keys were very different, and I think they changed some of the objectives in the games. But I thought it was so good, like the bit with like the shining and the blood, and we had like Bowser and Tracer and just characters, little Easter eggs they put in everywhere. I just thought it was amazing. I thought it was so good. I just can't understand why people wouldn't like it. Honestly, I thought it was fantastic. So good.
And that's where.
Oh, I was going to say, as standalones, I'm definitely with you that I enjoy the movie. And I think I was talking to Pete about this, that I'm curious how much their hands are tied, because there is so much of the other fandoms, right, getting permission to put them on the big screen and everything. So they have to change some things, as well as just the fact that it's longer for a movie too. It's like over 2 hours, where you can get a lot in there, but it's hard to get the same level of detail as, I forget what the audio length is, but a 20-hour audio book. But yeah, it certainly was fun to see all the different characters from the movies.
There's loads.
Yeah, and I think the Shining scene was definitely one of my favorites from the movie there, as H goes along and never seen The Shining before, and started freaking out with the zombies and everything else. Yeah,
I've not seen The Shining either. And just watching it, it was just so. It's just so cool to see. She was there with the woman, and then H is like, "I'll help you," and then the woman, H looks in the reflection, and it's like the woman's old, and then she looks back and she's got a knife, and she's killing the IOI guys, and she's just running through in the axe and stuff. It was just really good. I thought the whole thing was good. The only thing I think where it sort of dipped out is when they meet Artemis in real life, and that just sort of changed the dynamic, I think, of the movie. You weren't no longer just in the online part, the Oasis. You were obviously in the real life part, but I think that bit was good. That's as you said, that's my friend James Brimley is a director, and he directs films, short movies that say half an hour long, and they're low budget. But he enters films festivals, and he's won some of them, and they're on the big screens and that. So yeah, he's definitely up. He's really good at what he does, and I think in another 20 years, I think he'll be directing some actual films on the big screen. I really do. But he was a location scout for Ready Player One, where you have the car chase. It goes through a city called Birmingham, which is 20 minutes away from where I'm sitting now, and it's the second largest city in England. It goes London up here, and then you've got Birmingham in like Manchester, Liverpool, and Scotland further up. Whatever. But yeah, he location scouted. He said he didn't get to speak to Spielberg, but he saw him like he wasn't far away from him. He got to speak to the script writer and some of the producers and that. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Like that he got to work on it really, because it's such a iconic film, I suppose, because it relates to all of our like youth and that, all the 80s and 90s and stuff. So
Yeah, that's awesome. What were you going to say earlier, Pete?
So the book was by far absolutely amazing. The movie, if you separate it from the book, was a good standalone, and I felt it did well, kind of not going back as far, because prior I talked about how it goes forward and backwards, and a lot of the book, the nostalgia values are older elements, and then as we talked, it's probably due to, you know, getting the rights for each of those things that they bring on, and at the end of the day, they're not going to make any money, and that's not what it's about, so they incorporated a lot of more so current, you know, like Tracer and, you know, a lot of the other people from it. But the thing that got me is just like the story. Yeah, it wasn't the same story. And I guess first time I watched it, I was just like disappointed all the way around. But second time I rewatched it, I was like, okay, I get the nostalgia feels from all the characters, so I did enjoy it. You know, I got my car chase scene, I got, you know, my epic battle. It it did some things differently too. Like I don't know, and I guess at the end of it all, like we did end up basically in the same spot, so it's not like they couldn't continue it. Other than my understanding of the uh, Daito and Sho, because like Daito dies in the book, he's no more. Um, but he's alive at the end of the movie. And then Sho is an 11-year-old, which I don't think they specifically say how old he is, but from Sho's story and Daito's storyline, there's no way he's 11 years old. And that's where I felt the book just did so well. I forget the word for it, but it's essentially the missing millions, where in Japan, it's kind of like a cultural thing that they've got a word for, where the kids just, you know, sit in their room and never leave. You know, they get food ordered in, they spend all their time online, and, you know, they're known as the missing millions because they're not contributing, functioning members of society outside of that. And then there's another word essentially for, you know, essentially if something happens in the game or they finally lose hope and they kill themselves, which is where the book did a good job kind of bringing it all together. Because side note, the main character talks about how he's overweight due to his, you know, government aided lifestyle, blah, and he was getting bullied at school and this, that, and the other. And it talked about the joy of being able to get in the game and be whoever you want to be and creating your own persona. And that was great. And then as it progresses, after, you know, the tragedy of his home being blown up, and he gets his own place, and it talks on how the I can't remember the name of it, but there's essentially a workout simulation, and you can get additional stuff to generate and to have the workout. And with AI and with everything else, like literally as soon as he would eat or drink something, it would scan the barcode, add it to his calorie counter, and then he would have to offset it with, you know, a longer workout or whatever. And then he talks about being healthier and all this other stuff. And yeah, I don't know. The book did so much more for what I want to see if this ever was to take off, because like I really enjoy Sword Art Online, and they did well in my mind by incorporating, hey, people who are stuck in the hospital, or people who have lost the use of their limbs, or people who, are essentially in a coma can jump into that virtual reality and can still function and do other stuff inside there. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of details and layers that I appreciate in the book that it's hard. It would have been difficult for them to get into the movie in a 2-hour film, right? Um, I yeah, really have to put on like a different hat when looking at the two different forms of media, but there are some things that kind of, I wish they did different, or you kind of like scratch your head, right? And like, since they didn't include those details in the movie, it's not as big of an issue. But there were a couple things. Real quick, Lewis talked about there at the ending. In the book, he's Parzival or Wade's the one that ends up going into the loyalty center, right? And they just kind of scratch the surface on that with the movie. But he pretty much has, I want to say it's like a 36-hour window before they have to show up to fight. And he kind of like makes that announcement, call to arms, where they get like half of the population to show up for this big epic battle. And as Lewis says, like, we really don't get to see that popularity as much in the movie. I don't know. What do you guys feel about that?
So for that was one of the like good, bad, and ugly moments, because they achieved the same goal, where instead of Parzival, it was
Artemis.
wine patch face, Artemis. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so Artemis is the one who infiltrates it, and she's got like a different backstory because I think in the book, I don't know if she had a father. I remember there being talk of a mother, but
I
anyway,
think they
so
both
that.
lost their parents, from what I
Oh,
remember
yeah,
from the
that's right, because
book.
of the flu killed her. Anyway, so it went about it in a different way, where instead of Parzival being the one who tweaks the um, I am who I am legal stuff and gets in there, but they achieved the same goal, which was kind of interesting. And then on the opposite side of that, Parzival goes in, steals the data, pushes it out on the interwebs, and gives it to the authorities, where he pretty much shows IOI was, tried to kill him and did all these other things, where it was a pretty subtle thing, but then there's a part where H in the movie was pretty much like, oh, hey, I record everything, at my workshop. So we achieved the same goal, but they did it differently. Um, I really think it should have been kind of like, where is it? Should have been a Netflix series, or could it? I would have been happy with like a 3-part movie, like do movie one, the origin to key one. Because like for me, if you ended it right after we got the key and all this hype and all this build up, and it's like everybody getting serious about the event again, that'd be great. And then I guess the key two wasn't as exciting because there was a lot of waiting around and self pity and self wallow until we finally, someone figured it out and we got it together. And then I guess 3 would be essentially end game material, where it's just one giant battle. But
You just
I
want more battles in the movies.
I do.
We got a good amount though in the movie. I feel like the last quarter there was kind of the build up to the battle and
Yeah.
everything.
There
I mean, you
there's
get the
decent
Iron
combat.
Giant, right?
Well,
Um,
that was one thing that kind of irked me too, but that's besides the point.
why don't you tell us how you really feel about it, Pete?
There wasn't any gates. Like the movie was good, but we did 3 keys, and it was just kind of glanced over, and we didn't have any gates, and they didn't have the additional stuff. And I think, ironically enough, recently Disney said, "Oh, they're going to allow people to start playing as if they're the main character in a movie," which has been a thing since 2012. And only reason I found this out is because there's a meme where they announced that and then there's a scene where Anakin kills all those young Padawan or whatnot. It's like, oh, I can now play my favorite scene.
Oh, evil.
Anyway,
Yeah. There's a lot of good stuff though from the book that it kind of, the main character grew up in the 80s, right? So a lot of this stuff could be in our lifetime. What are some things that, like, from the book or from the movie you guys would really enjoy seeing in our lifetime besides the whole immersion virtual reality bit?
oh,
Um, or you could go ahead and talk about that. I don't know. Was there any things that really jumped out to you guys?
so for me, it was primarily the immersion in the virtual reality because it talked on several points where, kind of like I said earlier, bear with me. So right now, it is not advised, or I would not recommend sending all of our kids to school because that's just asking for problems. If we rerouted funding to a basic VR-esque thing, it's pretty much what we're doing with Skype anyway, or not Skype, Zoom anyway. It could be a little more interactive. And there is a scene in the book towards the beginning where he talks about, since it's all virtual, it's essentially a holodeck and you can do whatever you want. You know, he talks in his biology class how he's literally going through a heart and watching it pump from the inside and, you know, getting that. And then there's a history one where
Like
he
Magic School Bus, right?
yeah,
From
yeah,
back in the day.
essentially the Magic School Bus. And I know there's, you know, funding and technology advances, and then you run into the problem of, oh, well, unless the parent can stay home, how is this going to work? And yeah, the life changes, things are not going to be the same. But for me, I've got someone who I work with who was homeschooled, and they still attended a get together with other homeschool kids every so often. So it's not all or nothing. And then in the book, if you don't achieve a certain GPA or if you're not as successful in your classes, you get kicked out and now you have to attend. So there's incentive, which is a big part of any kind of motivation, you know, the carrot or the stick mentality. So yeah, and then it goes through the whole, I already touched on it, the physical aspect where, you know, if he didn't exercise and he didn't burn off the excess calories that he's consumed, he'd be locked out. He wouldn't be able to, you know, go in and enjoy the rest of the real world or the fake world
Yeah.
or the only real world to me.
I think some gamers can relate to that. Like, what is reality? You spend enough time in the virtual world that kind of becomes your reality, right?
Yeah.
Make online friends. I mean, like, here we are right now, chilling with Ben, our virtual friend across the world. So, how about you, Ben? Things from the book that you'd really like to see come true and not just be sci-fi?
I guess the bulk of the book revolves around the virtual reality online thing, really. I mean, there's certain things I wouldn't want to see, like the stacks. I think that's not good for anyone. Definitely not from a health and safety point of view, anyway.
Right.
And I just think there's a lot of poverty in the books, at least where the main character's involved. And I think we've got enough of that stuff. So I think probably just the online side would be amazing to have, like, the same kind of way. But the problem with that is that it's so easy today to pick out a child or a teenager or a young adult that's at home on their computer games console every day and not going to work and not contributing to society. That, imagine if we got it, and like in the film and potentially in the book, I can't remember exactly, but you've got like work people in offices playing, and you're like mums at home, like the kitchen's on fire, for example, in the film. And I think people would get sucked in, because I think what appeals to the characters about the Oasis in the book and in the movie is the same thing that appeals to everyone regardless of your age. So like people that are old will be able to like run around as if they're young again, and people that are poor can be rich, and ugly can be good looking, etc. And I just feel like if we did bring that into our world, that it would cause big problems. I think some things could do well, maybe like right now with COVID-19, we have like people working from home a lot. They're in offices and homeschooling. So there are definitely some aspects that would be really cool. But as like someone who used to play games, I'd probably say I'd probably be quite controversial and say I wouldn't want the Oasis to come here because I just feel like it would be great, but I think there'd be a lot of negatives with it. You know, I feel like there'd be a lot of negatives. Like people would be like calling in sick and people wouldn't be working. I think unemployment would be up, and yeah. But overall, probably the Oasis. I think it's amazing, and I think it's so immersive, and it's just a lot of fun. It's just interesting to see that you can do everything in there, and it's harmless as well. So if people have got like anger issues or they want to go online play competitive games, it's fine. If they die in the game, they die in the game, but it's not real, and that might bring crime down. Like because people are in their houses more often, might get a reduction in crime. So maybe that. I think just the fun of it. I think just the Oasis just looks fun, doesn't it? And the creator behind it, and everyone just had like nice, genuine like vision for it. And then obviously IOI tried to monopolize it. So yeah, I guess the Oasis just for the cool stuff like the Back to the Future DeLorean car, and you know the Iron Giant, and being able to visit planets and do things. And yeah, it is cool. I would mention that a lot of people, not a lot of people, but a substantial amount of people that are probably overlooked don't like the books in the first place because the writing's quite flat, and I think there's some condescending tones there if you're not from the 80s.
Yeah.
But I just think that's because it's his first book, I believe he wrote, and I think the 80s reference and the unique idea he's got has really paved over a lot of the mistakes that say a normal editor might pick up. And I think it's just because it's blown up so well. Because imagine this book didn't blow up. I don't think it'd be rated as highly as it was, which sounds like an obvious thing. If it didn't blow up, it wouldn't be rated. But I just think there are bits in there that probably aren't great writing techniques. And he's used a lot of the same words, I think, through his description parts that people like us have overlooked because we love it, because we like desperately into it. But I think if someone didn't play computer games and wasn't in the 80s and they read it now and they were like into, say, drama and art and they weren't into computer games, I think they wouldn't have the same appreciation that we have of the whole package, really.
Yeah. Couple comments there. I know in the movie, one of the things they did, I believe, was take the Oasis offline on like Tuesdays and Thursdays to try to force people to be more immersive. But I wonder how that works because, at least in the book, a lot of people, like you were saying, are like working from home and they do kind of like their call center type jobs or, you know, things that don't need to be physically in person through the Oasis. What were you going to say, Pete?
Yeah, that was the ending where, you know, now that he owns the Oasis, he made it so Tuesdays and Thursdays are offline. But I felt that's where the book did it justice because it dealt with a lot of the concerns. And it is a big culture shift to go from, you know, going physically to work and accessing it virtual reality wise. And there's going to be problems regardless. But for me, like I talked about with Wade, you know, he struggled with his weight. So there's a program he implemented and he was able to exercise there. And then through the Halliday's Easter egg and the whole book, you know, you get a lot of quotes where it's like, oh, reality, the only place to get a good burger because it's reality. And I think it shows up again in the movie as well for the ending. But, and then also with Halliday's love interest and, Ogden ends up marrying her and all this and that kind of has the whole falling out. But even though everybody's like all consumed with it and you're going to get, you know, extremists on every side, I felt like the book addressed it well where, you know, yes, I could see people going over the top. Yes, I think it will take time for people to finally understand it, but it touched that point off for me in the book where it you know, was trying to implement that you don't always need to be in the Oasis.
But it's understandable why people would want to escape there, considering the state of society. And that's
Well,
something
you can all you're the only one who can better you. So, if he didn't
true,
want to
true.
implement the gym scenario to get into better shape, he didn't have to. But yeah,
Yeah, it also created a lot of opportunities for people, though, right? Like the fact that in the Oasis, one of the things that was so controversial and why, oh, I forget the company, but pretty much the Sixers were trying to take over was the only thing you needed was the gear, right? And once you purchased the gear, you would have access to it. Um, and I know there's a whole lot more that kind of goes into the story and the conflict there, but there was this moment as I was reading it that I kind of got a chuckle where it's like, okay, so they basically want to add like ads, but they also want to charge a subscription service. So you have all the Gunthers and the Egg Hunters basically fighting the Sixers to make sure they don't have to pay a subscription service to access the Oasis, which I kind of got a chuckle out of. But yeah, um, gosh, I really want to get into doing some theory crafting for book 2 because I'm kind of curious which direction they're going to go with it. But I want to make sure we each have the opportunity to talk about book 1 first.
I think they could be interconnected.
Okay. You guys have any like big moments from book 1 that really struck out for you? I know, Ben, it's been a minute since you've read it.
Yeah, mine would probably be coming from the film. I'm just trying to remember the book. I know that I think the first key was probably, I think that was quite iconic. I remember reading, I was thinking this is really cool. I think the whole, just the big battle really. I like the film because it is a separate medium, but I think it's been designed to be received as a film, as a movie, because it's very visual and there's a lot of quick things and a lot of audio and there's a lot of stuff to watch. And I think with the book they can get stuff in, but with the movie it's a lot quicker to give you lots of visuals to look at, where the book it's got to be described one by one by one. I think the battles and stuff, I think in the book, and I think the Oasis and IOI in the book itself, I think just the whole concept, like there's a bit of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I think, with the book, because you've got like him going in, and it's like this secret thing, and it's who's the most sort of honest and genuine person sort of gets it, and it's got a bit of the Matrix in it as well, and it is a very good. Ernest Cline's done a really good job, obviously, of creating something that's quite iconic. It's really going to go down in history as being this iconic story, and it'll be interesting to see where he does take it. So for me, probably I like the movie because I've watched it like a couple of weeks ago. But I think just the battles are really cool. I think just seeing like Battletoads running along next to like Tracer from Overwatch.
Yes.
It's just so cool. It's just really cool. Yeah, really good fun. And the RPG, I think you have the rocket launch from Halo. It's just really cool stuff like that. Yeah, really good.
Peter's been talking about it for weeks. Like he wants all these epic crossovers from all his series, and here we have it in this epic final battle of Ready Player One. And I just lost track of all the Easter eggs and references. And every time I go back and rewatch it, I keep seeing something new. Like we already mentioned, there was like Overwatch, there was Halo, there was Bowser, there was King Kong, there was
Goro, Mortal Kombat, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Optimus is in the suit. Yeah.
Yeah. Just so much right there. And then, yeah, good to see you, Chaz. He says Ender's Game vibe too, in some respects. That's a book series that I definitely want to cover on this channel. And I keep telling Peter he needs to go through and watch it. And that's another one they've done a adaptation, right? Came out with a film. So lots of good stuff. Yeah. That's something that I read a lot in the Goodreads comments as well, is just the nostalgic feeling for everyone from the 80s references. One while I am an 80s baby, I didn't grow up in the 80s, but still see a lot of it there. And I think that was something else they maybe tried to do a little bit differently with the movie as well, as maybe
A little more
adapt
current.
it, a little bit more current stuff to try to catch the younger audience. Because I don't think too many kids today would catch all the references from like the early Atari's video games and all that good stuff.
And that's where like I think they could have done it. I am all about the battle and the blood, guts, and gore, and I absolutely love the majority of the characters that they had in there, and that was nostalgic for me. But I guess let's talk first gate or first key copper. It it was an old D&D module, but you could have easily, how many, I guess, drinking party scenes do we have in movies? Like, have a couple people getting together and LARPing or whatever, getting into character. And I felt like that could have very easily been a thing. And then the book, they take it and they just like crank it up a level, kind of like the third gate, where he's in playing that, oh, I forget the name of it, but it's essentially a side scroller, and now it's an immersive 3D thing. Like, I would have appreciated the nod to the old school stuff, but then also we're freaking recreating stuff left and right. Like, I can't tell you how many games are like, oh, hey, the new system's out. Oh, I'm gonna port over. Just kidding, that's not gonna work. We're gonna remaster it. So that is very much something current in the times with everything going on. So I think they could have done it. I understand why they did it the way they did, just for licensing and more common ground for different age group and friendly for everyone. Because the movie like just briefly touched on the fact that H was in the book is playing a Caucasian male, but in reality is a black female. And yeah, it just gets kind of glanced over in this. There's like a one-liner where Artemis and H are meeting each other for the first time, and they're like, oh, that's not what you expected. And she's like, yeah, I didn't expect you to have this van. And it's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
In the book, it's a bigger...
Yeah, and we talked about it. They don't have the time to include everything in the movie and a lot of that backstory, but I do feel that that's one of the elements that makes the story so powerful and so real. And I enjoy when books kind of address those real world issues where, with H's backstory, her mom talked about how she thought that the Oasis was like the greatest thing ever for women, and especially women of color, because she was able to create a white male avatar and kind of like even the playing field, so to speak. So it kind of brings those issues to the forefront. And then, while, her mom encouraged her to do that and just go by H and helped her kind of get into school as a male, a Caucasian male, then she ended up dealing with her own sort of challenges with her mother when she came out as being gay. And yeah, like important to kind of have that dialogue there. And the movie didn't really dive deep into the backstories of the characters, which I wish they did a little bit more of. But there's only so much screen time, right? But yeah.
Just to jump in so quickly, I think that when Artemis and H meet, I don't know what they do in the book, Pete, but I definitely think the film adaptation, I think it nails it, because I know that from the most gamers you talk to online, you don't, when you speak to people, especially on Xbox Live, you're like, oh, what's your name? Or you just call them by their gamer tag. You don't ever ask people what color they are, do you? It's just not something that crosses your mind. As a gamer, I think you just very accepting of everything, because you have to be accepting of giant pink blobs that are trying to kill you, or a dragon's
Right.
trying to kill you, you just take it as you come. So I do like the bit there where Artemis and H meet and they just sort of like get on with it, and she's not like, oh, you're a black woman. Like I like that it's just, and she's not like, oh, you've got something wrong with your skin. They just sort
Right.
of, they get on with it. And I think that's kind of almost like a subliminal point. 'Cause I feel like if everyone was more like that and more just non-judgmental of other people's outer appearance, it would be kind of cool, wouldn't it? Like it would get rid of a lot of problems. But whether that was intentional or not, and that was just the script writer, I don't know. But I think I don't know what happens in the book. I can't remember if I'm honest, but I definitely think it's just cool the way they just sort of jump into it and they're not thinking, oh, you're wrong here or you're this, and
Yeah.
and that's where the book, it was a bigger thing between Parzival and H because they were hanging out in the basement, which barely got discussed or whatever
Yeah.
in the movie. And so that was the key point. And then Ogden is inviting him back to his Lord of the Rings mansion. And that's where H has to pick up Parzival or Wade, and that's when they first meet, and it's more of a point there. I agree with you, just kind of glossing over it and just, like, hey, everything's accepted, whatever, we are who we are. And I guess random point for like if we did more online schooling and if it was more VR versus Skype and whatnot, like you could be whoever, you can force dress code, you could do a lot of that, which could help.
Yeah. I think it's one of the nice things about online forum is that like it's kind of just an even playing field, right? It's much more about what you can contribute to the group than who you are, where you're from. We've all been gamers and been in guilds and
Well,
whatnot.
and that's where games just help you understand that everybody has a role and you can't solo this dungeon, You can't all be the DPS. It doesn't matter if you're an introvert versus an extrovert, You can't all, save that DPS who decided to pull aggro on the wrong person. It's just, yeah, you need the combined might of everyone, and it's all about XP, That's something that I was a little disappointed the movie didn't really touch on because that was a big point for me because, lit RPG in the book where they have the grind to 99 because that's max level at the time. But in this, everybody just like died super easy. And yeah, the time to kill was pretty quick, except for our main characters who they got their dramatic, long, excruciating deaths. But
Yeah. Boltek's calling you out there, Pete. He's saying that he saw a video of a 40-man mage raid in WoW. So not everybody has the role to play. You can just
but that just shows
your way through.
One for all and all for one. Like the coordination and the timing and just everybody had to be on point. Like you got a group of people together to run a 40-man raid all as mages. Like that takes planning, grinding, coordination.
Yeah. So the chat's kind of getting into some different things that we wish we saw more of in the movie, as good as the movie was. Pygmy Puff Reads talks about the LOTR mansion, which I agree, like would have been awesome.
Didn't even have the same storyline. Like
yeah. Which time-wise, you have to cut out some stuff, but he played a big part in that. Sorry, go ahead, Pete.
That was the two characters that messed up my viewing of the movie were Ogden because he's the butler, whatever.
I guess he was the curator there. Yeah.
And I guess even Batman had a pretty BA butler, but it's not the same. He wasn't the all-powerful Og. He didn't have his epic, sphere dance party with R2-D2.
Oh man, yes, I would have loved to see that scene.
And then, yeah, it was one of those weird ones where we achieve the same thing but in a different way,
Hmm.
because in the book there's a coin on top of a old school arcade game, and I think it's Pac-Man, where you literally have to play a perfect game, and he does that. And yeah, for the movie, that would be boring to watch a guy play Pac-Man. And okay, we still got the coin, which gave us an extra life, so that was cool that they incorporated it still, because it would have been a giant plot hole, or
Yeah.
sad. But yeah.
Um, how about you, Ben? Anything else from what you remember from the book that you wish you saw on the big screen?
Just what Peter jogged my memory. Like I didn't remember the Lord of the Rings mansion. I completely forgot. My
Hmm.
memory's terrible.
It's been a couple years. You've read
But
books since then.
the basement, I completely forgot. And that was one of the most iconic things that really stood out to me, because they went in there as like Gunther's name between the two of them, trying to like work it out. It was just H, and then I remember he brought Artemis in, and H wasn't happy because it was like meant to be just their area. I remember that, I think, and that basement was just such a cool bit, and they decked it out, hadn't they, a certain way, and you had certain aesthetics, and I think they brought that in. I thought that had been a really good, and I've got a theory behind Ogden and Morrow, is it Morrow? So I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I've got a theory for them for Ready Player 2, but I think for the book, I think just the basement would have been really cool. But then I think with that stuff, they just did it over telephone calls, and it would have probably been an area they wouldn't have needed to meet up to do it, sort of thing. So it's a bit, I think you always lose stuff, don't you? Like touching on Lord of the Rings, you lose that in in the Hobbit films. Spoilers. There's a part, I think it's, I don't know which battle it is, but they drop the guy who's a giant and he changes into a bear, and they drop him from the eagles. And in the Hobbit book, you lose the eagles and the goblins. You lose like the bear guy in the village when they meet him in his house. I can't remember his name. He's like a druid. So I think they're going to lose stuff, unfortunately. And yeah, of course, the book's a lot better. But I would say the basement. I think that was such a cool part. I wish they'd put that in. Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, the other character that they ruined. So they ruined Ogden, and then IROC. Like, IROC in the book literally has two scenes. He's a jerk in the basement, and he posts whatever on the forum saying, hey, I know these guys. This is where you can find the key. And in the movie, he was besties with, IOI number one. I can't think of the name.
Yeah.
And that like was not a thing. So
Yeah.
I don't know, I was a little disappointed, and they tried to like add comic relief with him about his neck issues, and like I didn't care. So
Oh man.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, kind of to wrap up book one and then get a bit into some theory crafting for book two. Book one, we pretty much like follow the journey of the average kid in poverty who is just like the diehard fan, going through the almanac, doing everything he can, and basically like wins by his wits, right? And his knowledge of holiday and everything. And we go through, and the big goal is to keep the Oasis falling into the Sixers' hands, right? Kind of like keeping it free and accessible to all.
Yeah.
And we were talking about it a bit in chat, where I feel like book one just does such a great job kind of wrapping things up and being a standalone, because we get through that epic fight scene at the end where Parsival wins, and he pretty much becomes all powerful, immortal. He resurrects all his friends in the Oasis. That way they don't have to completely re-roll their characters. He takes over his shares of the company.
Gregarious Gaming.
There you go. Look at you with mastering the name drops today. Yeah, and then he basically shares it with the what is now the High Four, which was the High Five before
Daito dies.
Yeah, Daito dies. And that's where we end off at the end of Ready Player One. Feel free to drop some other details that I'm forgetting.
End of book version.
Yeah,
And
and
then we also, I guess the big thing is, they want to be in the virtual or the Oasis so bad, but he's got his fling going on now. Where in the book, that's the first time he meets Artemis. Is like right at the end. He's just got the egg, all these emotional feels. Plus, like Artemis is the one who clutched that final gate, like only because she had knowledge on this specific thing, which
hmm
is, contrast because the first gate, it was all about Parsifal, and he was like, oh, yeah, I play Joust all the time with H here. And it was like, oh, yeah, first try, no problem. And then he gets to the last one, and he's like, I don't know. I haven't done this one in forever. I'm rusty. And
hmm
so Artemis pulls it, and she knows of a glitch where you can get additional coins. Anyway, so the ending of the book, that's where Parsifal or Wade meets Artemis, and after all is said and done, he and the whole like Easter egg with Halliday is, yes, he created this world, but he wished he spent more time in reality. Like he wished he actually, you know, professed his love to oh, what ended up Ogden's wife, and so all the feels of the game that he also brings it full circle of you got to stay in reality. But then in the movie, they break it. They freaking break it. The stacks go down, and Artemis is just like, oh, well, I'm with the underground, and I freaking kidnapped you. I didn't know who you were or what you were or anything, but I got these dudes who found you, and I freaking nabbed you in the middle of broad daylight after your house blew up. Like, because I'm
uh,
awesome. And, that's okay, okay. That's fine. I know there are a couple comments I was looking around online where they felt like in the books Artemis was kind of objectified and that it was very, I guess, stalker esque. But I didn't necessarily feel that way between Percival and Artemis because, like, for me, I watch a lot of Twitch streamers, I watch a lot of YouTube, and so I guess random name. If like Linus showed up and I saw him at the store from Linus Tech Tips, like I'd be like, oh my god, I love your stuff, and have all that, and
what are you talking
like
about? You wouldn't be able to recognize him with the mask and face shield or
I guess
whatever.
that's
Everybody
true.
at the
Not in
store is just supposed
today's
to.
world, but
I get what you're saying.
yeah, yeah.
I,
Anyway, end of book one, movie style. End of the first movie, it changes or adds an element where he essentially says he turns off the Oasis every Tuesday and Thursday,
mhm.
and it clearly goes all James Bond, where they're all decked out in their suit and their dress, and she's laying across his lap. So he gets the girl, you know, but yeah, it's a little different.
Difference between Hollywood versus the novel. We've kind of touched on that, and we got to see. We I think we know how you feel about the movie there, Pete.
It was
Um,
good, but they are not the same story.
they're not, but you did touch on a couple points that I just wanted to shout out. Is like there's a lot of good, as fun as the book is, like lessons and reminders that they really try to push through. Like remember to live in reality. Remember to focus on relationships, right? Like as much as everybody was go get it independent for the first two keys, the third one, you had to have three there, right? So it needed to be a group effort to get through to the final test. So like you can't go it alone, right? Friendship's important and whatnot.
Yeah.
So um, yeah, really like to dedicate some time to some theory crafting and really appreciate everyone in the chat helping us keep the dialogue going.
Yeah.
Start out with theory crafting for two there. Chaz talks about do we think that Parsifal is going to become the villain of the second book? all the power going to his head, making him a dark virtual overlord. I didn't even, think about that angle. What do you guys think? Is there a chance that he could be the villain?
I wouldn't say villain, but you can't make everyone happy. Throughout the book, it was a big thing where he was pretty much like, I'm building a spaceship, I'm getting my supercomputer, and I'm GTFOing. And then throughout the story, it's like, okay, so I got me a lady, and she wants to save the world, so I guess we'll help people make sure they got food and stuff. But in doing so, I see it flipping everything on its head, very Robin Hood style, where we're going to take from the rich, IOI, and we're going to give it to the poor, the needy, everybody else in the world. And because they didn't succeed, and that's the whole reason they're there, or I guess in the movie they pretty much say they banned them. It's gonna be it's just gonna flip stuff. So they're gonna push down all the people who wanted to hurt them and wanted to take over the Oasis, but in building up the other people and the average Joe, they're gonna hurt the feelings of the other guys, and then we're gonna get that moment where it's like, oh, they aren't all heartless, very much people working for the Lord Ruler from Mistborn, where that's the enemy, but at the same time, you gotta eat, you gotta provide for your family. So I see stuff like that.
Yeah. Pygmy Puff, you think there's a chance that we're going to get our main character killed off, leave the game for the next generation? I think that could be a fun twist for Ready Player 2. Do a solid time hop there and see how the Oasis evolves and grows.
So I guess I would have to say what I want to see is Ready Player One is all about being good and solo, doing the Joust solo game, doing the reenactments throughout the movies. It was all solo, doing, everything was solo. So Ready Player 2 is going to be a bit of bow chicka bow bow with him and his lady, and more 2-player PvP epic game action.
Start their epic dynasty. How would that work though? Because he's invincible. I mean, there's no danger for him there to go and be
But
PvPing
it's
it
not
up.
about. I guess it's I said PvP, but I didn't actually mean that because they're all like simulation within a simulation. Like when he's fighting, a Sararak and he's jousting. Like it doesn't matter if his character's invincible. So if he loses, he won't die. But it's still about being good at the game. So I think it'll be more of a generational shift for the games they're playing.
Okay. Yeah, we got a lot of good theory crafting here going on. Ben, which direction do you think they're going to go with book 2, or could go, or would like it to go?
There's literally so many options, isn't there, where they could go? I think the first one that I'm thinking of, which I don't think anyone's mentioned in the chat yet, would be, and it goes against the numbers like 1 and 2 being a direct sequel, but I think it could be a prequel.
Oh.
Why cast someone as big as Simon Pegg to play Ogden and then have him just for a few minutes? It doesn't make any sense. He's such a big actor, Simon Pegg is, even all the Mission Impossible films. He's a British comedian, and I just think they've cast him. I just think there's so much backstory they could do, like how the Oasis started and what kind of teething problems they come up, and what happened. Did people always lose all their stuff, or did someone find a way of hacking into it? There's so much stuff they could do. So potentially you've got a prequel, I think. And Louis has said he thinks he read somewhere that someone might have said it's going to run parallel to it, which would be also really interesting. But I don't know if it would do any good, because if you've got the main character winning back the Oasis from IOI and he gets all the the keys and stuff, what kind of story is he going to play? So I'd say it would be a sequel. I really like the idea that I think that he was going to potentially die or something. That sounds really good. I think Pygmy said, because that'd be kind of cool. But then they've got to come up with something unique and something good, and it's got to have tons of gaming references in. It's got to have another quest and a challenge. It could be maybe what's his name? Sorrento gets out of prison. Maybe he's causing problems, and
Yeah.
you got that guy. What's his name? The guy I can't remember his name now. The one we spoke about, the skull in his chest. He was like the bad guys.
Oh, IROC.
Yeah, maybe IROC. I think they could bring back those kind. I suppose what you've got to keep an eye out for with this kind of stuff is as soon as they release like any names that are being associated with the films, then you'll know whose voices are going to be in it. So you'll know which characters they're representing. But I think a sequel would be good. Yeah.
I didn't think about the prequel angle, and I think in a lot of ways it makes a lot of sense because so much of the first book talks about like the original creators, right? And in a way, Holiday and Og, like Ready Player 2, they were the two players that kind of like built this empire, right? And like you said, there's so much lore and exploration that they could go there and kind of like build that backstory.
And don't forget, Sorrento worked, didn't he? He worked on it as like an assistant.
Yeah.
He's obviously bad. And Ready Player 2 could be Halliday asking that woman to be on a date. He might say like, "Will you want to be my player too?" And it'll say like Ready Player 2, and I'll say yes, press ready, and she won't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's where she's sort of not interested. She pulls and goes to, oh, maybe it'd be a good idea to do a backstory.
Yeah.
Because you've got to remember, he's not doing it in film form. He's doing it in book form. And then the film just comes as a bonus for his paycheck. So a Ready Player 2 being Halliday and his, like, you know, the woman he loved, that could be a really good book to read how it all started, what, you know, how they went about it. That could be really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And it would add just that much more to Ready Player One when we go back and reread it, right? To get all the additional backstory and all the additional, you know, the reasoning why he set up the keys and the gates the way he did, because we got to experience it, you know, I forget how many years later, 20 years later after the Oasis was created. And we just kind of get hints at their history through the almanac and whatnot. But yeah. I definitely think I'd definitely be interested in reading more of their backstory.
Yeah, it'd be good. I'm just looking at the cover because Louis said that there's a gem in the O of 2. And there's like a little person trying to get it. So I don't know if you guys recognize that gem, if it's from a game. It looks a bit like, it looks like a rupee, probably from Zelda, but I don't know if Nintendo would put one of their characters in this. And the C for Cline definitely looks like Pac-Man. But I think that's just like, because Pac-Man might be in it. But I don't know what the gem is. The Ready Player 2, the gem, it does look like it's a gem. I mean,
is there a way that we could pull that up, Pete?
Kind of.
Oh, really? JJ says, the interview from 2018 says it's a different storyline involving all the same characters.
Okay.
Why are you such a small
Thanks,
image?
Bearded Bookworm.
Good. I suppose
different storyline involving all the same characters.
Honestly, my only worry is that it will be like, if you've not read Armada, I wouldn't waste your time.
Okay.
Because it's just nowhere near as good as Ready Player One. I mean, by all means, read it. It's got a bit of a Skyward vibe to it. Or Skyward's got a vibe of Armada to it, but it's just not as good as Skyward, and it's not as good as Ready Player One. So I'm only worried that his writing style will be more like that, and it won't be back to Ready Player One because it will flop, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I was kind of racking my brains about what all they could do with it, my first thought went to kind of what Pierre was talking about with Artemis, where they kind of wanted to change the world for the better in a way. And now that they have, you know, practically unlimited resources, all the potential good they could do there. And you take these kids that are pretty much coming from nothing, and then you turn around and put them in charge. Just think about all the interesting things they could do with society to try to make it better.
All of 1 was the vision that oh, not Og. Halliday had, like, this was his vision for people to share the interest of the material and to, enjoy doing stuff like that. But now we're on the flip side where it's, yeah, how to create it better from the view of the younger generation.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not amazing. I wish.
Kind of. Oh, hey, there we go.
Blow it up
So
a
let's
little
see
bit there.
here. Yeah, and then we
So it's
had
kind of got like the asteroids, stars in the background, um, little pixel guy there, and then the gem. And then, yeah, for the C, for the Cline, kind of a Pac-Man stuff. And what is interesting, the way the letters are put, I just watched this random thing on the interwebs, I forget where essentially it was like, oh, you remember those four foldy cube things where you do numbers and letters and you like fold it a bunch of times? Anyway, so it's a
yeah,
picture,
yeah,
it's like a smiley face, and then they pull the paper and it like accordions or unfolds, and it's like another giant, like completely different picture. So all of these letters, they have like a top and a bottom, and in the book, Ogden, or not Ogden, Halliday does the little notch in the letters to indicate the first clue. So for that, that's what it makes me think of, like the thing in the front, the thing in the back, and you like pull it and you can expand it. So I think he's gonna do like another Easter egg esque,
yeah, yeah.
which just makes sense because I mean he now has the power to create and build and do whatever.
It's a cool cover. It looks nice.
Yeah, it does look nice. It'll be interesting to look at it again after it comes out because I think Ready Player One also had kind of some little Easter eggs of its own in the cover, right? Like it's built as a maze to go for the egg, I believe.
I'm looking at it now. It's got it's got a key. It's got a silver circle of the one, the O in one. It's got a little person again trying to grab it. So that would implement that there is another sort of hunt or something on, another something to go for. Like it does. It definitely has the key in the O.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Why the font change? Does the font's changed, but I don't know why it's changed. Is it because does the font change because it's to do with something with the story maybe?
Someone, hold on, sorry, buttons. The font, more buttons. Button. The font is a maze because the big Easter egg in one is all about finding that random invisible cube and taking it back and having the creator of the game, be shown without it being on it. So you go like in the R, around, under. Anyway, so it's a maze, and then in the O is supposed to be the egg.
Okay. Here we are going through and analyzing in great detail the cover arts. It'll be really interesting to come back and rewatch this at the end of the year after we get through Ready Player 2. Yeah, there's just so many different directions they could go with it. Prequel, sequel, completely independent story. And yeah. I'm also kind of curious to see how the direction the movie would go to, because I guess they did end in a similar fashion, but not quite the same. There were some differences there.
Yeah, I think they could easily do it because I guess Daito takes a trip. he's now found his lady, and he's gonna either possibly get his own independent parallel universe side arc, or I was a little disappointed they didn't kill him. Like, I had a lot of respect. Like, reading the book the first time when they blew up the stacks, it was just like, oh my, things are getting real. And then like the fact that they pull it off with Daito and they actually kill him, it was kind of a two-part thing. Like, wow. And then at the same time, it gave a lot of like insight into this has already been happening. Like, without the Oasis and without everything else, like, there's a word for it, for the missing millions, and how people, get engulfed in it as it is now. So how much worse could it be?
Pete, I really think the Viking helmet is just so suited to your persona here. You want more death, you want more action,
Well, no,
you
because
want,
there's a
more
lot
blood,
of
guts, and
books
gore.
that are good, but they get that main character immunity. And granted,
that gets
Daito
tiresome.
and Sho were not, they were side characters. They weren't really main characters. But the fact that they were part of the High Five, they were closely, integrated. It just was more a nod to the cultural differences and the way people live, and the fact that people do go overboard, and corporate greed.
Yeah, there's a lot of good lessons and things and takeaway from the book, right? Like you said, they addressed the corporate greed, they addressed relationships, making sure we stay well rooted in reality.
Advancements in technology.
Yeah.
I still don't have my. Oh, well, no, that's not true. They have successfully created hoverboards. They're just not out for the general masses, and not as epic as Back to the Future would lead you on to believe.
Yeah. I don't know. Were there any major takeaways for you guys from this book or the movie? How about you, Pete?
Take my money.
Take your money. You want the Oasis right here, right now.
There's a lot. Like, I really felt like the book did well and is what we need right now. Like, it went from a senior, so an 18-year-old kid who is overweight and, has trouble communicating, is very introverted, and the dedication that he puts into a passion of his for trying to figure out how to get this Easter egg, like, that is a great motivator. That is very much like, if you find something you're passionate about, you can do amazing things. So that was empowering. And then throughout his progression, he gets hung up on a girl, emotions, hormones, like, that is a very real world thing. And that was very relatable. I guess in my notes here, one of the points that didn't really get emphasized in the movie was the whole, anatomically correct dolls, but there's literally like a one-liner at the very beginning of the movie, and that's a thing, and it's just like the book did so well, emphasizing all the technology advances, the be anyone, the motivated drives.
Yeah. How about you, Ben? Any big takeaways from book one?
Like good or bad?
Good, bad.
I think the book, it's tricky because I think the book it's just ticks all the boxes for most of us, and then just need a bit more like death and gore and stuff. But I think with the movie, like I said before, it's very much a standalone. But I think what they've done well with the movie, and unsurprising because Spielberg's behind it, I think they've transferred it very well from a book to a film or a movie. And I think that you can watch it with someone who doesn't play games, and quickly they can understand it, because you're not pulling out of the Oasis too often. There's only a few points, I think, where you're out of it. A lot of it takes place in the Oasis. it's easy for people to follow along the same characters rather than them changing. And 1 minute it's like some cartoon bloke, and next minute it's some real person, then it's like a girl, then it's a guy, and I think that's really good. So I think they've done a good thing, and I think they've transferred it well, and it's brought a lot more people to it, and probably got a lot more people. If it's done anything well, and it's a single takeaway, it's that it's made a lot more people understand how to be accepting of games, and probably why people go into it, and where they find their solace in these, especially as introverts and stuff. They find their sort of people in these games, and this happens today. So I think that is probably the biggest takeaway, I guess, that in our real world, away from the Oasis and away from the movie, that people are probably a bit more understanding of it, of the gaming culture, because it is a big culture and it is a big part of life, and it's only getting bigger with virtual reality and stuff. And I think games are obviously here to stay, and it's just good for people to understand them rather than just hate on them because they don't understand them.
Yeah, my favorite line when I talk about watching people play video games online for Twitch, they're like, "Oh, why would you do that? That sounds boring." I was like, every Sunday you stop and you put on football. Like, there's literally no variance other than it being reality versus it being, reality with with playing the game. And yeah, that's my best way to kind of connect it. Is you enjoy watching people play football. I enjoy watching people, kill people in video games.
Yeah. It's all the rage now.
Oh man, that meme. Esports isn't a real job. Esports is the only job. Pandemic style. Oh man.
Yeah. Hashtag 2020 life. Could certainly use the Oasis right now. So, yeah, with that in mind, we're getting kind of close on our typical time frame. Any other thoughts on Ready Player One and or Ready Player Two? Really appreciate everyone that showed up to hang out with us. The chat's been great this stream. Final thoughts, Pete?
Final thoughts. If you've only watched the movie, please check out the book. I guess there was a comment asking if there would be a book without a movie, and they ended up basically in the same spot, except for one guy didn't die, so they could easily do both. I don't see why they wouldn't. It's all about timing and funding and whatnot. Yeah. I guess we should do more book movie thingies because people know about them.
I keep telling you, man. Ender's Game would love to get in and talk about Dune. Gosh.
All right, who's in the kitchen with Dinah?
It's all right. Ben, final thoughts on Ready Player One? We really appreciate having you on again.
No, thanks for bringing me on. Sorry I've had to adjust it because obviously in England it's just about to touch midnight here.
You're good.
Yeah, it's a great book, and it's a great film, like a great movie. So if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend just pick it up and put it on your TBR and read it next, because it's not. I don't think it's very big. I think it's 400 pages, but it goes quite quick. And it's a lot of fun. It's really good book. And even if you've not played games, or maybe you're watching this video whenever and you don't play games and your significant other does, this will give you an insight into why people do it while still being a cool character-driven story. So yeah, really good. Really looking forward to Ready Player 2. I've got it pre-ordered for November. I can't wait. And yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of which, shameless plug, we do have affiliate links on our YouTube. We are currently streaming to a couple different platforms today. That certainly supports the channel. But yeah, if you haven't, pick up the first one and get ready for the second one. You got 3-4 months now before Ready Player 2 comes out. Really. Oh, go ahead, Pete.
I think this is the second series that we're actually current with. Granted, they're all one-offs, but
Only one book out. We're current with a series. Yes.
yeah, same thing with A Mark of Kings. That's the other one.
Yeah. We're working on it. We do about one show a week. Eventually, we'll get current with a couple series. That way, when they come out, we can do some fun theory crafting. I've really enjoyed that element of this show and appreciate everybody's contributions. Friendly shout out for a couple of our other BookTube friends that showed up. Go check out Pygmy Puff, Chaz at Books and Stuff with Chaz, JJ Bearded Bookworm. If I missed any of you guys, I apologize. We appreciate you. There's links for Ben's blurb down below. Before we plug our next stream, I know that Ben, you've been doing a bit of changes with your channel.
Oh, it's just all over. Yeah, I was doing stuff with the channel, and then I was doing a blog, but I couldn't get the blog to look as good as someone else's who I really admire their blog. So I was like, can't be bothered. Let's just get rid of the blog. And I'm trying to upload a video on Thursday for a review for a book that's out in August, and I've got some other bits potentially lined up. I'm just trying to find, I think, the time in a minute. I'm just trying to still find what is right for me. I'm trying to get my personality across, which is really hard in recorded videos, which is why I think these live ones are really good just to interact with people. But yeah, I'm just trying to find what I want to do, really.
Us too. It's a challenge. The point is to keep it fun, and that's something that we keep coming back to as we go and try new things and break things and step back and pivot and adjust. Want to keep it fun, which is why out of everything we have going on, these Geek Outs are like the bread and butter for us, where we can have our friends hang out and chat, come on live with us as we talk about books. And yeah. Pete, you got graphics for us?
Bow.
Whoa.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, look at that.
Had to monopolize a whole monitor to make it happen. But
I'm really enjoying this new software. Appreciate your guys' feedback if you like the changes so far. But next week, currently we have it back at our normal time, 8 p.m. Eastern. If any of you are interested in joining us like Ben on the live stream or in chat, let us know. I'm going to be trying to reach out to a couple other book dragons and Brandon Sanderson, The Way of Kings. Probably one of my easily one of my top 5 epic fantasy series out there. Brandon Sanderson, we've outed ourselves. We're huge fanboys. His writing is amazing. If you haven't started the book already or been through it, you're probably not going to get through it before next week, but we still would love to have you come on. It's going to be hard to do this book justice in an hour and a half, 2 hours, but there is just so much good stuff about this book. Next Sunday, currently at 8 p.m. Eastern. If that changes, we'll let you know through social media. Am I missing anything, Pete?
that is where everybody is supposed to come together and say, challenge accepted. I can totally read this in a week. Besides that, yeah. We're trying to get current with this because we got one drop in November, right? Book 4 is November.
Yes.
And then other random side snippet. Click more buttons here. Discord. If you want kind of like we're just always on, so we're hanging out there, and I'm currently trying to do like the mini stream things where I'll be editing videos. So if you want kind of like a sneak peek of potential upcoming videos, come hang out, see how the magic happens on Discord. Whenever I'm editing, I try to pop in there, stream it, so you'll be able to see what's up and coming and what we're working on releasing.
Yeah. Cool. We appreciate everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Ready Player One. Yeah. Pushing buttons.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.